I'm a huge fan of Bolliger and Mabillard. They design some of the greatest roller coasters on the planet. Unlike other manufacturers, this company has been pretty consistent throughout the years, sticking with tried and true concepts, all while slowly pushing the boundaries with different styles of roller coasters. My favorite concept of theirs is the Hypercoaster. This model was first introduced in 1999 with Apollo's Chariot. This concept has been going strong with their latest version opening in 2020. For the most part, this coaster style has stayed pretty constant, though there has been some changes throughout the years. The first major change happened in 2001 with the removal of the pre-drop. This was a very small dip that followed right after the chain lift, designed to reduce stress on the lift chain. The next change happened in 2008 with the introduction of the staggered seating. These trains are longer, thus creating more drag for those riding in the back row. Also, they may be longer trains, but hold less passengers with 32 seats, 4 less than the traditional 36 passenger trains. I can't say if these trains have been discontinued since the last coaster to feature the staggered seating was Shambhala back in 2012. Another change, which also happened in 2012, was the introduction of the Giga coaster. Still technically the same coaster design, B&M started to push the boundaries of this model by building roller coasters that exceed 300 feet. Currently, there are 3 Giga coasters built by B&M, the last arriving in 2020. Every single one of these models feature 8 cars, 4 cross seating, which is 1 less car than the original 9-car trains. Our final change, which is probably the most subtle, B&M removed yet another car from their traditional hyper trains, giving each train only 7 cars. So far, only 2 roller coasters have used these shorter trains, which is Mako, opening in 2016, and Candemonium from 2020. According to RCDB, there are a total of 18 different hypercoasters, 17 that are currently in operation. Of these 18, I've only been on 8. However, these 8 roller coasters rank as some of my favorite rides of all time. This has to be one of my toughest ranking videos because I love every single one. Without further ado, let's get to the list. Number 8, Apollo's Chariot at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. The original B&M Hyper, I think it all depends on the time of year and how full the train is, but the airtime on this roller coaster can be fantastic at best, mediocre at worst. The first drop delivers some excellent airtime for riders in the back row, which is the highlight moment of the ride. The layout is pretty strong, sticking with an out and back formula that focuses on airtime hills and one giant turnaround helix. For the most part, every airtime hill provides good floater, with the exception near the end of the ride that can give a quick jolt of ejector in the back row. Number 7, Nitro, located at Six Flags Great Adventure. Yet another roller coaster that provides inconsistent airtime. My first rides of the year back in April were okay, but some airtime hills lacked any decent airtime. I'm sure it was the weather because my ride in June was much better. Nitro is a massive hypercoaster. From what I could gather, it's the longest hypercoaster by B&M and the overall 3rd in length by this manufacturer. The layout is really strong, focusing on giant airtime hills and a forceful upward helix. This helix has to be one of the most intense elements on any B&M hyper. I gray out during this element every single time. Number 6, Indimidator, located at Carowinds. Hey, do you know that this roller coaster is underrated? I've only been saying this way too many times that you're probably starting to get annoyed. Indimidator is a fun hypercoaster, and I love the solid airtime that it provides. If you find yourself sitting in the back row, outer seat, be prepared for some epic floater airtime. The first drop is fantastic, and my favorite moment of the ride. Those pesky trims might steal some possible ejector, but they're not powerful enough to eliminate the sustained floater airtime that you'll get on basically every airtime hill. To me, the only drawback to this hypercoaster is its ending. Everything after the mid-course brake run is rather weak. Number 5, Candemonium, located at Hershey Park. My gut feeling is that this roller coaster will only improve over time. The ride is still rather new, and much of the surrounding foliage needs to grow in. Candemonium starts off with a great first drop and fantastic airtime hill. This hill provides some incredible sustained floater. I love how the upward helix ends by pulling out into an off-axis airtime drop. Honestly, I enjoy every element on this roller coaster right up to that last airtime hill with the trims. The giant Hershey Kiss fountain is a nice way to close out the ride. As a videographer, this is my favorite place to stand at Hershey Park, watching the coaster fly around the fountain. Number 4, Orion, located at Kings Island. Some consider it a hyper, while the rest of us, the right ones, call it a Giga. There's a lot to love about Orion. First is the theming. It may not be universal quality, but I love the whole experimental vibe that this coaster is putting off. The original soundtrack that is pumping into the section of the park is captivating. I'm just a sucker for good ambient sci-fi music. The ride itself is very solid, though it does feel a tad short. Continuing with the trend, the first drop is the highlight of the ride. Plummeting 300 feet at 85 degrees is enough to get anyone's heart racing. Also, the airtime, it's out of this world. The giant wave turn, though not as fun as a typical airtime hill, really provides some fun laterals. These first 3 elements can create a sense of vertigo. This may be one of the shorter Giga coasters in height, but it feels incredibly tall. When that feeling of vertigo kicks in, I find myself putting my hands back down and holding on. As I mentioned already, Orion is a shorter ride, barely beating out Diamondback in track length by 39 feet. You heard that right. If Orion had a couple more elements, I would rank this coaster higher. Even still, it's a solid roller coaster. Every element is fun. I don't think there's a dull moment on this ride. I could hear an argument for the upward helix, but yeah, Orion is a great Giga coaster. Number 3, Diamondback, located at Kings Island. We don't have to travel too far to reach our next coaster on this list. Located in the same park, just at the other end, is Diamondback. Featuring the staggered seating, this hypercoaster has longer trains, thus providing some insane whip in the back row. Just like I said about Indimidator, take a ride in the very back row, outer seat. The airtime is epic. The first drop is phenomenal. I love getting catapulted over the crest of that hill. The first airtime hill is also another incredible moment, producing some of the longest sustained airtime found on any roller coaster. Every airtime hill is top-notch, especially if you're riding in the back row. The splashdown at the end of the ride, though not an exciting moment, is still incredible to watch. Make sure to head up into the Eiffel Tower for the best view of this neat element. The only negative I have for Diamondback is its rattle. It's not awful, but it does pop up a couple times throughout the ride. Overall, B&M got real close to perfection with this hypercoaster. Number 2, Mako, located at SeaWorld Orlando. It was during my first ride on Mako when I realized how much I love hypercoasters by B&M. As far as I'm concerned, this roller coaster is the pinnacle of hypers. The airtime is top-notch, starting with the ejector-filled first drop and those long sustained floater airtime hills. The speed hill is also another fun moment, throwing in a pop-up ejector before entering the second half of the ride. Unlike the other hypercoasters on my list, Mako I think is best experienced up front. I was getting the most out of the airtime hills. Of course, the back row will get you the best airtime for that first drop. If there's anything I'm saying, just take multiple rides in different rows. I know some will say that the ending is lackluster, which I can understand. The ride transitions from airtime to overbanked turns, but I think it's a nice change of pace, especially with the interaction it provides with the lake and the guests waiting to enter the queue. Number 1, Fury 325, located at Carowinds. The king of Gigas. I can't get enough of Fury. Seeing it from miles away while traveling down the highway is awe-inspiring. This coaster demands your attention and is the focal point when entering the park. The way this coaster interacts with the guests at the park gate, taunting you to ride. How can you walk to anything else but Fury for your first ride of the day is beyond me. Like every other Giga or Hyper, the first drop is incredible. However, Fury has the best of the bunch. The first drop feels like forever as you plummet 320 feet to the ground. The low-to-the-ground high-speed turns is a change of pace from the other hypercoasters by B&M. I love these snappy elements, makes me feel like I could be ejected from my seat at any moment. The treble clef has to be the best turnaround maneuver on any roller coaster. Usually the turnaround is the boring part of the ride, but somehow B&M found a way to make it one of the best parts of the ride. Fury 325 is the complete package. It has speed, airtime, laterals, positives, and snappy elements, all coming together making not only the best Giga coaster, but possibly the best roller coaster on the planet. Well, that concludes my ranking of every Hyper/Giga coaster by B&M. I know there are still some good ones missing from my list. Hopefully in 2022, I'll check off a few more. I'd love to take my first visit to Canada's Wonderland, or finally take a trip over to Six Flags Great America. So, how was my list? How would you rank these coasters? Let me know all about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please click on the like button, and as always, subscribe. That way you continue to get great content brought to you by Xtreme Thrills.